History Month Assembly. You guys are being part of history in the making right now. Black History Month is officially recognized in February each year, so starting tomorrow. And several of your classmates helped put this special event together for you today. Some of you may be wondering why we are having an assembly honoring African American heritage. Well, it's actually a time to celebrate all races and cultures. However, today, maybe more than ever, we need to try to understand why we are faced almost daily with racially triggered violence. So first, let's define two words, racism and prejudice. Racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race, based on the belief that one's own race is superior. So in other words, you think you're better because of your skin. And a more modern definition would also include that racism incorporates unchallenged social and political hierarchies that only benefit the traditional white man. Prejudice. It's defined as a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. We can discuss these definitions at length another time, but the point is that racism and prejudice doesn't mean that you're a violent, outspoken, angry bully. Racism and prejudice did not die with the civil rights movement in the 60s. It didn't die with integration of schools after Brown versus Board in the 50s. And it didn't die with the end of the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation in the 1800s. Both racism and prejudice still rears its evil head daily. It may not always be directed toward African Americans, but we need to start somewhere with addressing why it still exists. And why not start addressing these inequalities with where it started in our own American history? I would argue that African Americans may actually be more American than most whites. Ooh, why do I say that? Blacks are the ones who, more than any other group, gave their sweat and blood to build this country during slavery and beyond. They even fought in all of our wars, including the Revolutionary War, without even being considered citizens. They're the ones who had to fight to use the 15th Amendment, the right to vote. They're the ones who had to fight for their constitutional rights as citizens, for basic human rights, such as marriage and education. Okay, so you know how your teachers will say at the beginning of each semester that you all start out with a 100% grade. And some teachers even argue that it's easier to keep that 100% grade than it is to earn it from a 0. And that's exactly the situation blacks have faced throughout history. Whites already had their constitutional rights and privileges, so it's like their 100% grade. But African Americans did not. Therefore, they had to start with that 0%. Blacks have always had to fight the government to gain and maintain their rights. They've always been the scapegoat in our history. They've always unnecessarily struggled. And that is one reason why we need to recognize Black History Month today. In our history here in the US, we have a very dark past that we struggle to address. No, it is not the fault of you and I that slavery happened, or that racism and prejudice exist. It is, however, our responsibility today to address it, face it head on, and teach our peers and our future generations about the mistakes of our ancestors. Just because something was legal in the past doesn't make it moral or ethical. Facing the difficult topics of our past will help heal these deep scars of inequality, so please, join me today on this journey. Together we can slay this dragon. Together we can dramatically reduce the effects of racism and prejudice. Together we can make our world a better place for everyone. We're here today to celebrate the successes and triumphs of our African American citizens. We're here today to recognize their achievements, accomplishments, and contributions to our world. And we're here today to acknowledge our tormented past, and promise to do better. And together we can.
What does Black History Month mean to me? It means raising awareness about culture and representation and what a privilege it is to be an African American in the United States.
Black History Month means that it's really just a month, but if we focus on Black history in all aspects of history and not just relegate it to the month of February, then I think that we'll get a more comprehensive understanding of Black history.
Black History Month is really important to me because I feel that as we move on through generations, we have this very closed-minded idea when we live in one area. I think that not understanding something leads to a certain type of racism and maybe even a certain type of prejudice.
Black History Month is not just a time where people get together and talk about African American history. It's a time where all races get together to acknowledge what has been done for each other, such as slavery, movies, songs, sports, dance, and of course, hair.
To me, Black History Month is a time to celebrate culture and heritage that I don't usually get to celebrate, especially around here. There's a lot of rejecting the black part of my heritage when I was younger. It was, on my part, there weren't a lot of black people around me growing up, and so it was like assimilating to what's around me.
Black history to me is where people actually understand like African American culture, but I can't really speak on it because my parents aren't African American, and so they don't really talk about it. Like my grandparents, they're from Jamaica or Brazil, so we don't really talk about that.
What Black History Month means to me is that I get to celebrate my dad's side of the family since I am half black and half white. I get to celebrate my dad's side of the family because he is all black, and so it's just really special for me to celebrate Black History Month because not a lot of people mention it, and I know there's not a bunch of people in this school that are African American or learn about that much as they need to be. So that's what I really like Black History Month.
I have a daughter that I've adopted who is mixed race, and for me, it's very personal because as I see how other minorities are treated, I take that personally because I look to the future and see how my daughter might be treated down the road.
It's a time where African Americans, no matter how dark the skin is, find a passion in sacrifices and success. That's what Black history means to me.
And so Black History Month is a time for me to reclaim that and to take back who I am.
That's what I really like Black History Month because we get to celebrate one culture, and I think we should celebrate more, but unfortunately we don't.
But I only know about like Black history from what I learned in school, so I can't really speak on it, but that's what it means to me, I think.
So I really like being able to celebrate my month with Martin Luther King Jr.
Even more importantly though, it means also raising awareness about other cultures. We are a culture of bouillabaisse, we're also a melting pot, we're also a salad bowl. And when you take all that stuff together, it means that we should learn what Atticus Finch said, we should need to walk in other people's shoes.
Hi, my name is Eliana Jones. I would like to take this opportunity to speak on behalf of all different cultures of African Americans. My speech is about questionable experiences and a history that never died. I want you to take a minute to look at your left. Now, take a minute to look at your right. Without hesitation, look around this whole school. I would like you to know that this assembly that we are attending today would have never happened, nor would I be up here if it wasn't for the people who sacrificed their freedom for me and you. I would like you to remember that as I continue my speech, there wouldn't be a history book if there was no history, and no voice if there wasn't something to speak for. No one really deserves hate. We all deserve kindness, even if our actions are not present. As J. Cole says in the novel, Tyler Johnson Was Here, the thing about hate is you can't throw it on someone else without getting a little bit on yourself. We throw hate around all the time. People who have died for our country and people who have been killed are two different ways to look on the ongoing society. To see the person that's supposed to protect act differently on the news and the media, sometimes in what seems like our own backyard, is scary and upsetting, and more dead to serve in the name of our country have no empathy. This is something that we are just beginning to understand as a nation. This is something we've always understood as people of color. We know that many people in positions of power want to understand. It's important that we begin to. Let's talk about the transition throughout the years that have cops thinking his life was in danger. The moment a child cries is the moment we open our eyes. We should never be afraid of our own safe zone. As one police officer said, I shouldn't see 8-year-old kids of a different race scared of a white police officer. I shouldn't hear fathers telling me how they're scared of their child to go out into the world because they are afraid they would be killed. How do we communicate our stories with one another? Imagine Springfield, Missouri, 1906. 3 black men were accused of various crimes. A mob formed outside of the jail and broke down the doors. They dragged Horace Duncan and Cocker down Bonneville Avenue to the square. The men were launched and their bodies burned on Park Central Square. It took until 2019 for Springfield to publicly acknowledge the history and put up a plaque. Of course, we all remember Emmett Till, 1955. 14-year-old Till for allegedly whistling at a white woman. He was beaten until the point his mother could not recognize her own son. In 1963, there was a bombing at a prominent civil rights church. This bomb claimed the lives of 4 young girls, Kara Robertson, Cynthia Welcy, Denise McNair, and Addie Mae Collins. And today, Trayvon Martin, 17, Tamir Rice, 12, Cameron Tillman, 14, Mike Brown, 18, Laquan McDonald, 17, Jeffrey Holden, 18, and Kushan Wilton, 18. Being black is not about being in a gang. Being black is not about having the biggest afro or naturally being able to dance. Being black is something more than using the phrase, I have the black card, as you use in the hallways or right in my face. Being black is not something you can claim if you don't have the background to prove it. As J. Cole says, my skin does not define me. I tell myself that I love this skin, that if the world doesn't love me, I will love myself for the both of us. Everyday activities with majority of people who don't look like you is not all colorful rainbows. Walking with my white mother, I can imagine what she goes through because I go through it too. There are judgments and there are stereotypes. They do not stop. When you enter a beauty salon and they tell you they can't do anything for your type of hair besides wash it and call it good, don't underestimate what I'm saying. Being black is something to be proud of. William Hastie, lawyer and judge, graduating top of his class. Jesse Brown, Navy pilot. Barack Obama, first U.S. president of African origin. Muhammad Ali, great boxer of 1960s. Michael Jordan, considered the greatest basketball player of all time. And lastly, Kobe Bryant, NBA Finals most valuable player. Black History Month is a time for all different people to have realization that we never had a choice, from how people view us and the color of our skin. This is why we stand here today. Thank you.
High school.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lebanon High School.
Good afternoon.
I want to thank you for inviting me to speak here today. Wasn't that a great video that we just saw?
Yes.
I checked with the counselors before I came in. Percentage of African American students at Lebanon High School. How many? What percentage you think? 2%. 2%. I live in St. Roberts, where Waynesville High School is located. Waynesville High School has about 30% African Americans. Guess what? Lebanon's having a special program for Black History Month, and Waynesville is not. It shows you how enlightened these people, the administrators of Lebanon are. I'd like to thank Ms. Hutton for inviting me to come and talk to you today. Black History Month started as Negro History Week in 1926. That's something about the way, the politically right way to call people of color. So we started out as Negroes, then we went to colored people, then we went to blacks, African Americans. Any of those will be politically correct. How many of you are planning on staying in Lebanon all of your life? Raise your hand. I don't see many hands. As I used to tell my heritage students, you need to learn something about people that's different than you. Because Lebanon is not a typical city. As you go off to college, to the military, to different businesses, you're going to encounter people that do not look like you. So I challenge you to study more about people of color, of different nationalities, so you won't do something stupid when you get around them. In 1976, President Gerald Ford expanded Negro History Week until Black History Month. Now, some people may have thought that I'm related to President Ford. I'm not. I was in law school at the University of Missouri, Kansas City in 1976. In my first day of classes, I had a prejudiced white professor named Rudy Heights. He was calling roll. He said, James Ford, is James Ford here? Are you related to the president? Oh, I guess you're not. So you see, some people just do not understand. You know, it's a wonderful time to step back and recognize the many great gifts that African Americans have brought to our nation. Let's reflect on some of those names that we've had. Martin Luther King, how many have heard of Dr. King? Everybody should have. He was the leader of the Civil Rights Movement. Rosa Parks, how many heard of Rosa Parks? I had a chance to actually meet Rosa Parks when I lived in Alabama before she passed away, and had a chance to talk to her. Andrew Young. I see a couple of hands. Andrew Young was the lieutenant for Dr. King, and he's the first African American ambassador to the United Nations. John L. Lewis. John L. Lewis was the leader of Bloody Sunday, was almost killed. He now serves in the House of Representatives and has served there for about 40 decades. 4 decades. Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson was lieutenant for Dr. Martin Luther King, was on the balcony when Dr. King was assassinated. I've had a chance to march with Jesse Jackson in Birmingham as they was trying to go after the first black mayor of Birmingham. After Michael Brown was shot in St. Louis, our family went up and we have a picture with Jesse Jackson. He's the one that suggested that our family take that picture. Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was the first African American appointed to the United States Supreme Court by President Johnson. When I was sworn in to the Supreme Court, I can actually argue a case before the Supreme Court. He was on the bench, and that was a very meaningful experience for me to actually be in the same room with him. Now, I'm sure all the guys know this one. Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson was the first African American to go into professional baseball in 1948. He broke the color line. All of those people have made a significant contribution to American history to make our nation a better place. Now, this afternoon, I want to base my speech on my life. This is called an oral history. And guess what? you guys can do oral histories also. I want you to talk, but more importantly, I want you to listen to your parents, to your grandparents, to your aunts and your uncles. Ask them about their experiences. I bet you they will shock you because they probably never had kids ask them to talk to them in that way before, to give them personal advice. So I want you to do that. You know what? I love Lebanon High School. Some great students have come through Lebanon High School, both black and white and all different colors. Thomas Rover was probably the first African-American student council president of a predominantly white school in the state of Missouri in the 1950s. When he died a couple of years ago, several of his classmates made a memorial for him in the cemetery. Sam and Dow, in your wall of champions, you see Sam's picture. Sam was a friend of mine. He was a few years older than me. We were the same scout troop. Sam was a two-time state champion in the distance. He went on and was a monster lineman at Missouri State University. He was actually drafted by the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs. But there's been other great students here. We have great students here now. Students in the band and in the choir and different student organizations. We got district champions. One of these days we're going to get Camden, but we're going to get them. And of course we have the great girls state wrestling champions. So we've always had great students here at Lebanon High School. I love the city of Lebanon. Lebanon's had some great citizens. W.T. Vernon in the early 1900s was appointed by President Teddy Roosevelt to the Department of Treasury. He actually signed, well, they had a printer, but his name was on all paper currency for a period of time while he was there. Just saying, somebody from Lebanon, Missouri's name was on every bill in the United States. He also was the president of a college, and he also was a bishop in the AD religion. So he was quite a person. My mother, Eleanor Ford, taught at the all-black school. Yes, we had an all-black school here in Lebanon because this was before the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Once we integrated in 1957, I was in the 3rd grade. Lebanon integrated the same year that Little Rock Central integrated. Little Rock Central had to have soldiers to accompany those students to their classes. We did not need soldiers in Lebanon. We were welcomed by the students and the teachers and the staff. My first school was Mark Twain, which is now Boswell Elementary. They both were on the Wall of Honor, and we've had over 80 citizens from Lebanon on the Wall of Honor. This past year, Bev Miller, who I taught with, who I took her as American Heritage teacher, went on the Wall of Honor. Now, you probably noticed my sweater, and I'm going to put this outstanding student on the deal. Don't anybody help me? How old is this sweater? Is she right? No. No. How old? So I count. 51. 50 years old. Good job. 50 years old. I wear it once a year. Ask your parents if they have something they can still get in that's 50 years old. I wear it once a year around the Martin Luther King holiday because Dr. King was a member of this fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. I actually was at the first celebration of Dr. King holiday in Atlanta, Georgia in 1987. And we got to do a march after they had their ceremony. I went to Lincoln University. Lincoln University is located in Jefferson City, Missouri. It is what's called an historically black college, which means it was founded by some Union soldiers after the Civil War. Of course, white people can go there also, but it was initially for African Americans. So I went to Lincoln. There are several historically black colleges in the nation. 41 of those colleges banded together in something called the United Negro College Fund. They do that to help raise money. Charles Barkley just gave $1 million to one of the colleges. I've had the honor to teach in 2 historically black colleges. Miles College in Birmingham, Alabama, and Tuscaloosa College, and Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. What other schools in Tuscaloosa? Anybody know the sports? University of Alabama. University of Alabama is also located. The students at Stillman had all the rights and privileges of the students at the University of Alabama. We had a Black History program each year because when the Martin Luther King holiday came about, the state of Arizona would not recognize the Martin Luther King holiday because they'd have to give their state workers time off, and they didn't want to do that. Alabama went and played the game, and the money that they got, they had a big celebration each year, and they were bringing people like Cicely Tyson and other actors and things for the money that they raised because they fought there. Education has always been a big portion for African Americans. There were 2 leaders in the early 1900s. One was W.B. Du Bois, the other was Booker T. Washington. Du Bois was the first African American person to get a PhD from Harvard. He believed in academic excellence, like we have here on this side of our campus. Booker T. Washington thought that you should work with your hands. So that's vocational, like we have in our VOTEC. Both of them really wanted, though, for African Americans to get education after slavery. Booker T. Washington established the university, Tuskegee University, in Tuskegee, Alabama. Military service also became very important. And on the Tuskegee campus, they had a program that led to the Tuskegee Airmen, which are fighter pilots who fought during World War II. We also had the Buffalo Soldiers. The Buffalo Soldiers actually saved Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Riders, in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. They were called Buffalo Soldiers because Indians saw their hair, so they used to have some that's curly, and they said it looked like buffaloes. So that's how they got that name. There are several places that I want you to visit. The closest one is the George Washington Carver Monument, located in Diamond, Missouri. George Washington Carver is from Missouri. How many of you guys like peanut butter? George Washington Carver came up with many uses for peanut butter and a sweet potato. So down in Diamond, Missouri, they have a memorial where you go down and see the works and all the different things that he did. Other places I think you should go to is the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee. That's where Dr. King was assassinated. It's at the Lorraine Motel, and you can actually see the room that he was in the night before, the balcony where he was standing when he was shot. You can even go to the place where James Earl Ray stood when he fired the rifle that killed Dr. King. The Civil Rights Museum is located in Birmingham, Alabama. They mentioned that that's where 4 little girls were killed in a bomb that went off as they went from Sunday school to their service, morning service. The 16th Street Baptist Church is located right across the street from the Civil Rights Museum. The Dr. Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta, Georgia, is where Dr. King and his wife, Coretta Scott King, are buried. When they had the Olympics there in 1996, more people visited the King Center than any other place. They now have a Martin Luther King monument in Washington, D.C., as well as the newest and National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. This is probably my last speech that I'll be giving at Lebanon High School. We are moving to Tennessee this summer. We're getting kind of old, and our kids said that we'd probably get closer to them. I've given many speeches here at Lebanon. I think I did 2 Tales Assembly, 2 Diversity Fairs for Miss Barker. I did a speech after the 9/11 attacks. And as I talked to my American Heritage students on the last day of class, I gave them a written words of advice as they got ready to go out into life. This afternoon, I would like to give you some words of advice as you get ready to go on with the rest of your life. Number 1, find someone special. Find someone special to share your life with. My wife is here, Judy, and Judy and I have been married for 48 years. And I love you. Number 2, join a group, whether it's a fraternity, a sorority, a civic club, a motorcycle gang, a bowling team, some group. People need to be with other people. You don't need to be by yourself. And in your group, choose somebody that's different than you. Whether they're a different gender, a different color, a different age, especially today, a different political party. You need to have somebody that's different than you so you can bond together, so you can listen to them and learn from them. Number 3, establish a spiritual life. I'm not saying what religion, I'm not saying what denomination, but establish a spiritual life. You gotta watch. Does a watch just exist? No, somebody has to make that watch. You look at this world just does not exist. Something's got to be in charge of it. So establish a spiritual life. Number 4, buy a joke book. Paul Dudley and Lyndon Dudley's dad was my pastor in St. Robert. Pastor Dudley used to always tell a joke in his sermons. When he retired last year, I went out and bought a joke book. And as I go about my daily life, I tell jokes. And it's amazing how uplifting that is for people. You've heard people say if you smile, somebody will smile with you. If you tell a joke, it gets even better. I'll try one on for size for y'all. Who knows what Forrest Gump's password is? Forrest Gump's password. 1, Forrest, 1. Number 5. Explain that to your neighbors if they didn't get that. Number 5. Obey the law. There's a song now, but I'm sure it's because I fought the law and the law won. The law is always going to win. You may think you get away with it for a while, but it can really wreck your life. So always obey the law. I was a JAG officer, which is an Army lawyer. My very first case at Fort Hood, Texas, I had a young private from Kansas City, Missouri, and he was African American. When I walked in, he started grinning. I said, hey, I'm not here to represent you, I'm a prosecutor. I'm here to put you in jail. So always obey the law. Number 6, set some goals. One goal for everybody here should be what? Graduate from high school. Set some goals. Set some goals. You can always change the goals. Once you achieve a goal, strive for another goal. If you go to a ticket counter at a bus station or an airport, what are they going to ask you? Where do you want to go? You can't say, I don't know. So your life is much more important. Set some goals. If you achieve that goal, then strive for another goal. Number 7, always do your best. No matter what it is, whether it's teaching, whether it's preaching, whatever it is. If you're going to be a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger there is. Number 8, pass it on. I've been watching a lot of TV this last week after the tragic death of Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's a good example. He was teaching his daughter how to play basketball. Unfortunately, she died with him. But if you look, there's a lot of NBA players, National Basketball Association players, that he also helped, and how they took it very, very hurtful. As a teacher, this is something that is easy for us to do. Teachers pass on knowledge. I take the Lebanon record. It used to be the Daily Record, now it's the Cleveland County Record. I like to see my former students doing well in Lebanon. Seems like insurance is the biggest thing. Got Jason Russell, Max and Chris Meckham, Steve Cooney, all were in insurance. Got Whitney Rector, who is in hospital. Okay, last thing. I want to do something to get everybody up in the movement. When I played high school basketball, we had a yell. It says, I'm from Lebanon,